our valuable Samah Jabr for organizing this meaningful meeting with us. Today, we will be approaching genocide from a very different and very meaningful perspective with Dr. Jabr, who will become the voice of the Palestinian people and the pioneer of the struggle for mental health. We would also like to thank Dr. Jaber's assistant Zeynep for her contributions to the organization of the event. We are glad you are here and we are happy and pleased to host you today.
Thank you.
We would like to thank Karşı Sanat for opening its doors to us and hosting this event today. We are grateful for making it possible for us to come together in here. Today also there is an exhibition presented here. The exhibition includes 6 posters from the Victory is Ours exhibition prepared by Muhammed Emin Albayrak, inspired by the verses of Palestinian author Mahmoud Dervish. We would like to thank to him for allowing us to display the posters
Afişleri
here.
burada sergilememize izin verdiği ve Filistin direnişine mesleğiyle katkıda bulunduğu için kendisine çok teşekkür ederiz.
We would like to thank our translators Şule Girman
Ayrıca
and Zeynep
çevirmenlerimiz
Sökmen,
Şule Girmen ve Zeynep Sökmen'e
and will enable us to convey this
mesajlarımızı
to the
daha
wider
geniş bir
audience.
alana yaymamıza yardımcı oldukları
We
için
would like
teşekkür
to thank
ediyoruz.
the entire organization team who worked hard to organize
Bu
this
etkinliği
event.
organize ederken
Any
emek
part
veren
of
tüm organizasyon
contributed to our
ekibine,
projects, and most
projelerimize
of all,
katkıda bulunan
to
herkese
Özgür Özcan, who brought us
ve
together and enabled us to
hepimizi bir araya
establish this
getirerek bu ağrı
network.
kurmamızı
And
sağlayan
of
Özgür
course, we
Öğütçen'e
would
çok
like to
teşekkür
thank
ediyoruz.
you, our valuable
Elbette
participants who have attended here today.
bugün buraya
Those who
katılarak
stand for Palestine, I
Filistin'e
would like
vakit
to
ayıran
thank
ve bu
all the
dayanışmanın bir
soldiers.
parçası olan siz
Welcome
değerli
you all again.
katılımcılarımıza teşekkür ediyoruz. Tekrardan hoş geldiniz.
Turkey-Palestine Mental Health Network. We
Türkiye,
have
Filistin
carried
Ruh
out
Sağlığı
our work
olarak
to
bugüne kadar
date and
çeşitli çalışmalar
continue to
ortaya
do so.
koyduk ve
Most
koymaya da devam
valuable of
ediyoruz.
these works is so-called
Bu çalışmaların en
360
kıymetlisi
Faith-Based 365
Filistin
Stories
halkının
project,
sesi
which
olmak
we
adına
carry out in
yürüttüğümüz
order to be voice
365
of the
gün 365
Palestinian
hikaye
people.
projesidir.
We would like to express our endless gratitude to everyone who
Bu
contributed
projemize
to this project,
her gün bir
writing and
Filistin'in
enhancing the
hikayesini
story
duyurmamıza
of a
katkı sunan
Palestinian
herkese sonsuz
people.
teşekkürlerimizi
This
iletiyoruz.
project which we carry out to make the voice of Palestinian
Filistin
resistance
direnişinin sesini
heard
duyurmak için
means
yürüttüğümüz bu proje
significant
sizlerin
to us
desteği ve
as
dayanışmasıyla
presenters.
anlam kazanıyor.
We would also like to emphasize the importance of our signature campaign
Ayrıca
for the Palestinian
Filistin
people.
halkına yönelik
As the
yürüttüğümüz
network,
imza
we
kampanyamızın da
initiated
önemine
a
değinmek
military
istiyoruz.
signature campaign.
A
We
olarak
coordinated
bir
and
imza
supported this
kampanyası yapmakla
campaign by
başladık.
scanning the QR code on the roll-up. For
Etkinlik
us,
girişindeki
in
roll-up
this
üzerindeki
step, we
QR kodu
need to be
okutarak
part of the
kampanyayı inceleyebilir ve
solidarity.
destek
We
verebilirsiniz.
hope that one
Her bir
day in the
adım bizim
future,
için büyük
with
bir
this
dayanışmanın
valuable
parçası anlamına geliyor.
solidarity, we can play a role in the
Dileriz
reconstruction
ki
of
ileride
Palestine in
bugün
every sense
bu kıymetli
and harvest
dayanışmayla
the olives with the healing
Filistin her
effect of
anlamda
this
yeniden inşa
solidarity.
edilişinde rol alabilir ve
Now, before
dayanışmanın
we start
iyileştirici
our
etkisiyle zeytin
conference,
hasadı
let's all
yapabiliriz.
listen the deeply moving oath written by Dr. Jaber in English and Turkish.
Şimdi konferansımıza başlamadan önce Doktor Jabr'ın yeminini İngilizce ve Türkçesinden dinleyelim.
Hocam açabilir misiniz? Evet.
veya sessiz kalmayacağıma yemin ediyorum. Psikiyatrist Doktor Samah Jabr'in kaleminden. Ruh sağlığı profesyonelleri ve sağlık çalışanlarının kurtuluş yemini. Adalet ve özgürlük arayışı ruhuyla bu yemini bir ruh sağlığı uzmanı ve bir doktor olarak ediyorum. Rolümün yalnızca semptomları tedavi etmek değil, insan dışılaştıran ve boyun eğdiren sistemlere meydan okumak olduğunu kabul ederek, sömürgeciliğin, ırkçılığın, baskının ve sömürünün her türüne karşı duracağıma yemin ediyorum. İşkence eylemlerine asla ortak olmayacağıma veya sessiz kalmayacağıma yemin ediyorum. Her türlü baskı ve adaletsizliği ifşa edeceğime yemin ediyorum. Hizmet ettiğim her bireyin ve topluluğun onurunu, kültürünü ve tarihini kutsal tutacak, baskının açtığı yaraları iyileştirmeye çalışacak ve sömürgeciliğin silmeye çalıştığı kimlik ve failliğin yeniden kazanılmasını destekleyeceğim. Susturulmuş olanları derin bir saygıyla dinleyecek, onların seslerinin eylemlerime ve kararlarıma rehberlik etmesini sağlayacağım. Dayanışma içinde yanlarında durarak adalet çağrılarına ses vereceğim. Gerçek dönüşümün hem kişisel hem de sosyal dokunun onarılmasını gerektirdiğini anlayarak travmatize olmuş toplulukların kolektif iyileşmesini teşvik edeceğim. Adaleti savunacağım, acı ve umutsuzluğu sürdüren koşulları dönüştürmek için çalışacağım. Baskıya direnenlerin cesaretini ve direncini onurlandıracak, mücadelelerini adaletsizliğe karşı hayati ve sağlıklı bir yanıt olarak kabul edeceğim. Direnişlerini patolojik göstermeye yönelik her türlü girişimi reddedecek, özgürlükleri ve haysiyetleri için mücadele etme haklarını savunacağım. Alçak gönüllülükle ve yargılarımı gölgeleyebilecek ön yargı ve varsayımları öğrenme taahhüdüyle hareket edeceğim. Sömürgecilik ve baskının ağırlığına katlanmış olanlardan bilgelik isteyeceğim ve onların deneyimlerinin pratiğimi şekillendirmesine izin vereceğim. Özgürleşmiş halkların deneyimlerinden öğrenecek, adalet ve kurtuluş davalarına hizmet etmek için bilgi ve uzmanlığımı geliştirmeye devam edeceğim. Çabalamalarımda mesleğimi bir kontrol aracı olarak değil, özgürleşme ve iyileştirme aracı olarak kullanacağım. Plastik incelere kırılana dek ve her insan onurlu ve barış içinde yaşayana kadar kendimi herkes için adalet, özgürlük ve haysiyet arayışına adayacağım. Bu nedenle mesleki yolculuğum boyunca bu yemine sarsılmaz bir kararlılıkla bağlı kalacağımı, gücümü ve tutkumu daha adil ve insancıl bir dünya yaratmak için kullanacağıma söz veriyorum. Bu benim sözüm, benim kurtuluş çağrımdır.
Mental health professionals and healthcare workers for liberation. In the spirit of justice and the quest for freedom, I take this oath as a mental health professional and a doctor. I vow to stand firmly against all forms of colonialism, racism, oppression, and exploitation, recognizing that my role is not merely to treat symptoms, but to challenge the systems that dehumanize and subjugate. I will never be complicit in or silent about acts of torture, and I will expose all forms of oppression and injustice. I will hold sacred the dignity, culture, and history of every individual and community I serve, striving to heal the wounds inflicted by oppression and supporting the reclaiming of identity and agency that colonialism seeks to erase. I will listen with deep respect to those who have been silenced, ensuring that their voices guide my actions and decisions. I will amplify their calls for justice, standing beside them in solidarity. I will foster the collective healing of traumatized communities. understanding that true restoration requires the mending of both the personal and the social fabric. I will advocate for justice and work to transform the conditions that perpetuate suffering and despair. I will honor the courage and resilience of those who resist oppression, recognizing their struggle as a vital and healthy response to injustice. I will reject any attempt to pathologize their resistance, upholding their right to fight for their freedom and dignity. I will conduct myself with humility and a commitment to unlearning biases and assumptions that may cloud my professional judgment. I will seek wisdom from those who have endured the weight of colonialism and oppression, allowing their experiences to shape my practice. I will learn from the experiences of liberated peoples and continue to develop my knowledge and expertise in serving the causes of justice and liberation. In all these endeavors, I will not use my profession as a tool of control, but as an instrument of liberation and healing. I will dedicate myself to the pursuit of justice, freedom, and dignity for all, until the chains of oppression are broken and every human being can live with honor and peace. Thus, I commit to uphold this oath with unwavering resolve throughout my professional journey, wielding my strength and passion to forge a more just and humane world. This is my promise, my invocation.
I would like to thank Dr. Jabr for bringing this meaningful ode to our profession. We will be touching on many topics today, but before we get into those topics, I would like to give the word to the Dr. Jabr.
Thank you very much. It's heartwarming to be among you today. It's really touching to see that you have quickly organized your efforts as professionals in solidarity with Palestine. So I'm really appreciative for the creation of the Turkish-Palestine Mental Health Network. And it's also impressive to see so many young people, young professionals who want to listen to something that doesn't really belong to mainstream Western psychiatry that is dominating our world. And maybe today we can touch upon this topic and see how can we think out of the box and out of the chains of Western psychiatry to meet the needs of our world.
Thank you. Okay, then we can move on the question part. First of all, we want to ask you about why Palestinian issue talk so much little among mental health professionals.
Why Palestinian issue?
Talk and that little in the mental health professionals.
Oh yes, there has been a lot of silencing for Palestine using the premises of neutrality and impartiality in mental health. In my opinion, this is a misunderstanding of the meaning of neutrality and impartiality. Why they don't talk about Palestine? Because Palestine can bring noise to the status quo. I think that knowledge in general, including mental health knowledge, is dominated by Western thinking, and knowledge can be used as a tool of imperialism. And in the world, there is psychological imperialism that suggests that the knowledge that is generated by the West can be applied to anywhere, everywhere, anytime. So a minority in the world who produce research and knowledge in our field assume that every part in the world, in the Orient, in the global South, we should just internalize this kind of thinking and implement it in our work. Now, the silence about Palestine was exposed in a scandalous way when the issue of Ukraine erupted. And the big mental health organizations who have been so quiet about Palestine, actually, they have been hushing us whenever we bring Palestine to stage. They suddenly started talking about Ukraine in a very open way. I remember attending a global mental health summit in Rome, where big international mental health organizations were represented. And that conference was opened by Elena Zelensky. So suddenly mental health spaces were open to a political discussion, in spite of the fact that Palestine was silenced for so long. So that was kind of a big exposure. I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking too fast for the translation. So are people getting translation or? There's
Okay, in Zoom.
And it's so good to see friends on the Zoom. So I just want to say hi to our friends from the other networks.
Sadece mikrofonunuza dokunmayın. Her dokunduğunuzda ses oluyor. Dokunmazsanız görünüyor.
Okay, we want to learn more about Smooth today. How it comes to the word as a terminology, and also what would it be like if a new psychotherapy approach was created with the integration of Smooth?
Okay, those are two questions. Let me tackle one at a time. The word Sumud, as understood by Palestinians and has been used in Palestinian literature, is a word that includes psychological resilience, but it is not restricted to psychological resilience. Resilience, as we understand it in Western psychology, it's bouncing back to the pre-crisis, pre-stress, pre-traumatic state. While Palestinian Sumud means steadfastness and perseverance in the face of atrocity, it is not restricted to a psychological state of mind. It is also about action. It is also about political action and resistance. Now, Palestinians across the century of occupation and the year of genocide have understood that Sumud can be practiced in different ways. Sometimes it is simply by staying grounded to the land, rooted in the land, and sometimes by taking initiative in resistance, while all the time trying to maintain the morale of the Palestinian people, the perseverance, the steadfastness. I just want to say that the word has been in Palestinian literature for so long. It is older than the word resilience, and it is larger, and it takes, the way it is used means that it can be an individual trait, an individual characteristic, but also a collective characteristic. Unfortunately, so far, I'm not aware of any effort to study the concept of Sumud in a way that can decide certain, like it has been studied in as a theme, but no psychometric assessment or no effort was made to study it in a quantitative way. And this is an effort that we probably need to take in Palestine.
Also,
The other part of your question was about how it is.
it can be a part of psychotherapy.
It can be a part of psychotherapy. Okay. Well, first, when the term is mentioned by people, in whether the explanation, the concept of it, or the word by itself, it's usually validated. And I think there are certain efforts that are being done by Palestinian professionals now to strengthen the collective experience in therapy. We understand that a collective trauma cannot be dealt with individually. Collective trauma produces many individuals who are directly affected and who carry symptoms in their bodies, in their minds, in their emotions, but also it attacks the social fabric of Palestinians. So Palestinians are trying to invent local interventions, local practices that encourage collective healing and listening spaces for people who lived similar experiences. For example, mothers of martyrs, ex-male prisoners, journalists who were targeted and attacked, medical professionals who have been targeted and experienced special bad treatment by the soldiers. So we understand that there is something that people need to do at an individual level, but in a healing circle or listening space, people support each other. This kind of intervention, it builds on the organic way in which the community supports each other. And also individuals who participate in the group get liberated from power dynamics between the therapist and the patient who is at the receiving end. Instead, they support each other. They use their critical thinking, their awareness, their dialogue to support each other. And each and every one of them will be a helper and a receiver at the same time. So I think that's how we are trying to get inspired from the concept of sumud as it is expressed in Palestinian literature and by ordinary people, and integrating this into our practices in mental health.
Also, we want to learn more about the colonial concept. Smooth is one of them, and there is also Ashla. Can you tell more about us about these concepts?
Sumud, I already covered it. Ashla, the word in Arabic, it means the parts of the body that are being targeted by Israelis. And this attack on the body is part of the wish for annihilation over the Palestinians. And we have observed over the past year killing after killing in Palestine, killing people by attacking their bodies, their homes, excessive destruction that is not only meant to be a punishment for certain individuals, but it is meant to create vicarious trauma for anyone who can see how massive the destruction is. For other neighboring countries, when they observe leveling Gaza, they will be they will freeze into helplessness. And the excessive killing of the Palestinian bodies, even after their death, they went to their graves to unearth them. They prevented the burial, a decent burial for the bodies. So after the killing, there was further insult to the Palestinian body. We in our profession, we deal with the psyche, with the emotions, with the behaviors. I just want to quote a study that was published in The Lancet in July 24. It's about counting the dead in Gaza. And the researchers questioned the numbers that are announced by the Palestinian Ministry of Health, saying that at the time it was something like 40,000 people dead, and 10,000 who stayed under the rubble. And the colleagues, they used a special equation that takes into consideration the indirect death of those who were left without chronic medications, who died due to infections, to chronic diseases, high mortality rate among mothers who gave birth, high infant mortality rate. So they arrived to the number 186,000 people in July 24. We can imagine that this number is about 250,000. Why is this important? Because if the physical death is so ambiguous, imagine the invisible. We as mental health professionals, we deal with the invisible pain. How can we qualify or quantify the pain? When I saw the image of an 8-year-old boy from Gaza hugging the grave of his mother, and his father explained that every night he goes over, she was killed 2 months ago, and every night he goes to her grave and sleeps on her grave. How can we use our knowledge to qualify or to quantify this kind of pain? So the situation in Gaza and the pain, and back to the concept, ashla', this fragmentation that is happening, it is an experience that is beyond our mental capacity to understand at one time. We are observing what's taking place there, and we try to understand, we try to integrate all of what's taking place in our heads. And I assume that we professionals are more capable than others to understand this situation, but nevertheless, it's been extremely difficult.
Also, are there any other colonial terminologies?
I think there are decolonial concepts, decolonial thinking rather than terminology. And I think there is an open-ended answer for your question, but I would say that when we dare to question the applicability of practices that developed in the white West, their applicability in our context, that is important. When we become sensitive to the language that is being used to describe our pain, that is decolonial thinking. Let me give you 2 examples. One example is being used frequently now in Palestine as part of the MHPSS support, the mental health and psychosocial support that is being given by international NGOs. One of the tangible things that they give to Palestinians is something that they call dignity kits. And those are hygiene kits with toothpaste and soap and sanitary pads. They are being distributed to women in Gaza. First, they are being distributed sometimes by governments who give military and diplomatic aid to Israel, like the British government. David Cameron boasted on this support that was provided to Palestinians, and he said, women in Gaza deserve dignity kits. And that language, it creates split in gender among Palestinians, assuming that women are innocent and the men are criminals. We have less empathy for the men. So that's a colonial practice, and to oppose it is a decolonial reaction that is appropriate and needed. And our health professionals should stand up against this language and protest. The other thing that has been used in Palestine frequently is the PTSD diagnosis. Plenty of research was published in Palestine about the prevalence of PTSD. And I can speak volumes for why PTSD does not capture the Palestinian experience. It can best capture the experience of a soldier who goes back to the safety of his home and continues to have hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, nightmares, and avoidance in the safety of his home. The avoidance or hypervigilance of a Palestinian is very legitimate because the trauma is continuous. We are never in the post phase. We are never in the post phase. So the symptoms are not pathological. They are necessary for the survival. Also, I think this diagnosis ignores the fact that trauma in Palestine is deliberate. It is deliberate. It is made, political trauma, it is made for a purpose. And in our case, it's not like a car accident that takes 1 second. It is continuous. So we can best understand our reality through the lens of historical trauma, which is colonial, continuous, cross-generational, and cumulative, and man-made and deliberate. And this understanding will make our preparation and our response to trauma different than the usual PTSD. We don't want EMDR in Palestine. It is not appropriate. It is suitable for a car accident. It is not suitable for someone who has been living for more than 400 days in continuous threat and trauma. We are in a traumatic atmosphere, traumatic environment. Wherever you turn your face, it is all over you. And the assumption that the conventional interventions will work for us is a completely false one. So that's to go back to decolonial thinking. I think to dare and question the mainstream assumptions in mental health and their applicability to our world is very important. Another example is the assumption of the concept of homeostasis. Like in Western mental health, we want to go back to the pre-crisis situation, to the pre-traumatic situation. But in Palestine, people want to change power structure, not to go back to pre-genocidal state. So plenty of differences, I think, between how we conceptualize our reality and what the mainstream mental health thinking suggests for us.
Also about trauma, especially when we look to West Bank. Normally, trauma is something unexpected, but in Palestine, there is an acceptance about that, because people know that in every minute something bad can happen. They know it with their historical background, from their peers, from their relatives, but they just don't know when it will come and how it will come. How can you evaluate trauma in this sense?
How can we
evaluate
trauma?
That's
I don't think we evaluate the person who comes with us, with the symptoms that he brings with them. I spoke about the problem of the diagnosis, the cluster of symptoms of PTSD versus what we see in Palestine. But also the way we conceptualize trauma is different. Trauma, as defined by the DSM, for example, it's about actual or threatened harm to the body or sexual violence. It doesn't account for humiliation, which is a very prevalent trauma in Palestine. Colleagues at Birzeit University have published something about it, and I've written something describing humiliation as the assassination of the psyche. For example, according to the DSM definition of trauma, if someone spits in the face of a young Palestinian man, that is not considered trauma. If someone insults the mother of a man that is not accounted for. When a young Palestinian woman in political detention, she asks for toilet paper or sanitary pads, and she will not be given that unless she dances to the Israeli national anthem. This is not considered to be trauma. I don't think in Palestine, because as I described it, it's a traumatogenic atmosphere. We cannot really dissect the different experiences and say that this symptom belongs to that experience or a consequence of that experience. There is a lot of overlap in traumatic experiences and in the symptoms that they develop. What we do in our evaluation of people is that we listen to their narrative and we take into consideration not only the biopsychosocial, but within the social, the violation of human rights and the political violence and trauma they were exposed to. At least we name it. When we listen to that, we validate the emotions and we name that this is a violation to human rights. This is the minimum that we can do when we listen to people. To let people know that we acknowledge the horrors that happened to them and we validate the pain. We help people to understand that the trauma means to freeze them into helplessness. And we help them to realize that retaining back regaining their agency is a way to tackle the effects of trauma. Usually, when a person comes to clinic, they present with symptoms of dysfunction like occupational dysfunction or physiological complaints. And they speak about the latest thing that brought them to therapy. In our evaluation, we make an effort to understand who this person was before the latest event and what was his relationships like. And then we talked about what happened to them. And then we explore what is helping them at this time and what is not helping them. And we design our interventions according to this extensive exploration of the people, while all the time avoiding to ask the question, what's wrong with you? But focusing our evaluation on what happened to you.
We think that the genocide in Palestine have taught us a lot and developed us as a mental health professionals. We are now learning new terms with a decolonial perspective. How should this decolonial terminology should be developed? Should we include new terminologies or use like existing terminologies such as surrender, taslim, or jihad?
Again, I want to liberate us from the restraints of terminology and to open doors in a new thinking, allowing ourselves to be open to new thinking and a new praxis, new thinking that leads to a different kind of interventions. And with crisis, there are opportunities. With the horrors of genocide, I think some people feel motivated and energized to respond to the situation in different fields. And we mental health professionals, at least we should strive not to be a tool of control that contributes to silencing people, pathologizing their symptoms. Instead, a tool of liberation that helps to acknowledge the pain and the suffering and the experience, advocate for the rights of those whose the violation of human rights is causing them psychological suffering. Our responsibility, I would say that our responsible reaction to this reality is to use our discipline in understanding the situation, helping the affected, but also campaigning among mental health professionals who have been silent, who have been complicit about the situation in Palestine, and hopefully to generate a new way of thinking that can challenge the imperialist psychology that can be used as a tool to characterize